Hi everyone, welcome to today's research-informed defensive lesson here at Active Self-Protection. I'm your host, use of force expert, John Correa.
And I'm your co-host, CEO of Active Self-Protection, Stephanie Widener.
Palm pepper spray is next generation OC spray. It's hot at 1.4% major capsaicinoids, and its modular design means you can customize it exactly to you. 3 different setups, lots of different color combinations. You can make it exactly as you like. And the flip top safety prevents accidental discharges. It's 10 to 12 foot range and 25 half-second blasts. Make sure that you can keep that long range eye poke at long range. I trust Palm OC and I recommend it for everyone for self-defense. This one comes out of Wasatch County in Utah. What we're gonna see here is one guy come on camera and just barely come into frame. He's gonna be followed by a second guy who they had some kind of interaction that police are saying is probably road rage a little ways down the street. And our first driver, instead of turning kind of left into where his home is gonna turn right into where this park area is that's under video surveillance. And then he's gonna get out of his car. Listen into what happens very closely. I'll tell you the outcomes once we're done hearing it.
Get out? Come on. Come on. Come on. What's wrong? What's wrong? Come on. Come on, you little. Ow!
You heard that one shot there, and then our second car, he drives off here. He is going to then take off. Nobody called the cops on this one. 12 hours later, somebody came by, saw this guy covered in blood with his car still running on the roadside there. Called the cops. Then police used the cell phone data and cell phone tower repeater data to figure out who the other car was and who was in that car. He had buried the gun that he had used in this particular incident. Now, they did not charge him with the death of the decedent. They said that they could not prove that it was not self-defense, but they did charge him with obstructing justice, multiple counts of it actually, and he is facing 1 to 15 years in prison for that. So we go into this in a lot more depth on the Active Self-Protection Extra channel, but Stephanie, as a use of force expert and an expert witness, do most people understand the law of self-defense well?
No, no, and it's a problem. It gets people jammed up all the time. So that's why it's so important to us to teach lessons like that on our other channel, Active Self-Protection Extra, where we can go in depth into those kinds of lessons.
Yeah, so hey, make sure you go over there too. We're gonna give you a good dose of it here, but the format's pretty small. So over there, much deeper dive. Oh my goodness, Stephanie, how many times have we said that road rage is stupid? And the only way, you can only live this forward, right? If you're gonna prevent this. If you try, now obviously I think both these guys, if they could go back, would change, never get involved in this kind of conflict, never be invested in it, because one is dead and the other's life will never be the same and probably is going to do some serious prison time. And the only way to avoid this is just to not let road rage overcome you.
It's that emotional fitness that we always talk about. You have to think through these kinds of things ahead of time and understand I am the kind of person that does this or doesn't do this. Make those decisions now. You guys are training and mentally educating yourselves about the type of situations that are out there as you watch these videos. Take a minute and make that decision now that I am not the type of person that engages in road rage because I want to protect my own life and I want to protect my family by not having to go to prison over something as foolish as this.
I just want to reiterate here, these folks here, we are looking back at what happened to them. But you can't live life that way. And how many people sitting in prison sit there with regrets about what they did? And of course, the other guy, he got to go meet Jesus. And so I don't know what the status of his life is from there, but part of living a life of spiritual fitness is being a good, sane, sober, moral, prudent people, making sure that your relationship with Jesus is strong, letting that come back and influence your life in this world as well. So then that way you stay out of these problems. Now, I think what the news stories originally didn't say is he got out of the car, Stephanie, with a knife and a pipe in his hand. And so we're going to talk about those when we go there, but I know you go, wait a minute, is all these things reasonable? But remember, when the whole thing starts with something unreasonable, like I'm pissed off enough at this guy to have a road rage incident with him, everything goes out the window. So that's why you have to have the presence of mind to stay in your right mind and do smart things.
And we see this all the time with people contacting the channel and asking questions, sending us videos of their own self-defense incidents where they view the incident from their own personal experience radically differently than we might view it objectively, meaning you're kind of that hero of your own story. It can be very difficult when you're emotionally invested, when you're shot full of adrenaline and everything else, maybe even a little scared, all that stuff that's going on. It can be really difficult to see objectively. That's why we make these decisions now, because it can be really hard in the moment to know, am I the good guy here? And as we'll see in this particular incident, it can be really murky. Now we have to figure out, is it reasonable for this guy to get out with a pipe? Is that reasonable for the other guy to be scared about that? Can we both be right? Can we all be wrong? It's a real mess. So like, John, what you were saying, rather than looking back with regret, make those decisions now that I'm the type of person that doesn't let my emotions rule, doesn't get involved in road rage incidences, and covers my ass the best that I can.
Train your character now, and that way you make good decisions and your boundaries are set that you don't get involved in these things. Now, our decedent here, the man who died, is it legal for him to get out of his car? Sure, it's legal for him to get out of his car. He kind of got boxed in here, I think, into an area where, okay, wait a minute, I'm not going to get this guy back to my house. But now talking from a tactics and ideas perspective, I think this was really unwise. Now I don't think it was illegal, and I don't want to run him down too hard, but recognize the better choice here, if you had gotten into something and then you're kind of trying to get away and this guy keeps following you, the answer is use your cell phone, get on the phone with 911, say, hey, I'm being followed by a guy that I'm worried is going to hurt me. I need a police intercept or lead me to the nearest police station and have somebody ready, so then that way we don't have a problem. That would have been the smart choice here.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more because, like you say, can he get out? Sure. That starts to get difficult to explain that I was in fear of my life. That's why I grabbed this pipe when you're getting out and moving towards what you see as a deadly threat. But from a tactical perspective, we see him completely exposed to this car here, and cars make really good self-defense weapons or offensive weapons. In fact, they're probably far more effective than the pipe or the gun in this instance. So to ostensibly end whatever is going on here, he's exposed himself to possibly the worst threat that just by getting out of the car. So yeah, it's just tactically not smart if you're dealing with someone else who's aggressive, and he clearly was.
I also think part of that is when we listen to the audio here is that he, after the guy tried to kind of run him over, all right, we'll talk about that in a second, but he egged him on. He was like, come on, get out. Come on, you want to fight? Let's go. Or, something to that effect. And again, this just paints him in a light that, he's not the aggrieved party who is seeking to avoid violence. And part of being a good, sane, sober, moral, prudent person is avoiding fights wherever you can. A lifestyle of de-escalation, escape, and evasion is absolutely incredibly important, because he ends up dead for this here. And the other guy, whether we call him a defender, the aggressor, the guy who shot, the guy who is now defending his life in court, he tries here to kind of run him over a little bit. And I might be able to make a defense of that, Steph, that, hey, wait a minute, I saw the guy get out with a pipe. I was worried he was going to hurt me with it. My window was down. So what I had was I had my, my vehicle available. So I used it. And then I couldn't go any further, and so then he came around the window at me with that pipe, and so I shot him. Maybe that's the case. And I want to go back to what you said earlier, Steph, that everyone kind of paints themselves as the hero in their own mind, But I feel like nobody comes out of this one looking like a good guy.
No, you just think that you do, because that's very often our follow-up communication is, unfortunately, when I look at this video here, I see you as the aggressor. You are the one committing the crime. I'm not talking about this video. I'm talking about perhaps other videos that we would have had sent. And that is just something that hasn't entered their mind, because it's really hard for some people to see in that kind of third person objectively. And so it's important to just live that life of de-escalation, evasion, and avoidance, because you never know when you've got yourself a little carried away, might not be seeing things as clearly as you think you are.
I really think that's important. And in our guy who's defending for the rest of his life, of course, as a prosecutor, you're going to ask, why'd you follow him? Well, we got in this thing and I needed to tell him how wrong he was. Well, friend, now you've instigated a conflict. So you were the one by following away from where you needed to go, because clearly this isn't where somebody lives. This is a public park, a national park thing. So why were you following him? Well, he had to know what he did was wrong. So I don't know who the initial aggressor was here, but I don't think our decedent, the guy who died, he doesn't look great getting out with a pipe. Now, our defender here, he doesn't look great because he's the one who was instigating and following at this point. I can't tell for sure what he did. And then in his aftermath, Stephanie, he decided, I'm going to run away. I'm not going to call the cops. I'm not going to offer any aid, and I'm going to bury the gun. And all of that looks like the evidence of a depraved mind. That looks like the evidence of somebody who knows what they did was wrong. And I'm kind of surprised, given all of that evidence, that they didn't charge him in the death.
I really am too. Likely if he had been charged in the death, that would have likely been an instruction given to the jury to assume that someone fleeing the scene like that and hiding evidence should be considered evidence of guilt. That's an instruction that the juries get when we see something like that. Now, that shouldn't be confused with someone that feels like they need to leave a scene for their own safety. That actually can be really important and is easily defendable. If you have had an act of self-defense, a defensive incident, and you don't want to call the police from right there and want to kind of get down the block to a place of safety, if we're talking 5, 10, 15 minutes in a mile different location, those are very different things than going home, burying the gun, and waiting until the police find you via your cell phone. And that kind of touches on that myth, John, that we hear about all the time that, well, dead men tell no tales when it comes to this. So if you have to shoot someone in self-defense, you should shoot to kill them. But we can see in this video very clearly that even though this man has passed away, he can tell a lot of information via what people are thinking, by the words that they say, by the actions that they're taking, by what they're doing before, during, and after. We can piece together what their mindset was. And like you said, John, neither of these guys come out looking like a good, sane, sober, moral, prudent self-defender.
They really don't. And I also want to note, even if we hadn't had this one on video, I mean, the video doesn't really show us a whole lot. It does, through the audio, give us a little bit of context. But they really caught this guy via his cell phone. And unless you're going to roll around going, oh, I'm going to go back Amish and not have a cell phone, well, you better make sure you drive a really old car too, because most modern cars have things like OnStar system or GPS locations, satellite connections, and guess what? Those are all available to be looked at via subpoena and via warrants. And so the cops went and found this guy. And when they got to come find you, you look like the bad guy. That's as simple as that. As a general rule, the victim goes forward and seeks help from the authorities. That's how that works, which is why if God forbid you're ever in a defensive gunfight, I want you to win the fight to 911. I want you to win the call to 911. Oh my God, this guy just attacked me. I need help. Now, maybe in a case like this, you call your attorney first. Certainly, I would call Firearms Legal Protection and the 800 number first. Hey, I need help. Or even better, have somebody else call 911 if they're in the area, they're in the car with you, something like that. So then what they say is admissible, but not as bad as anything that you might say, okay? So that's really better there, and you should be on the phone with your attorney. But recognizing this, you've got to win that fight to 911, because otherwise you're going to end up catching charges. Don't go home and bury the gun. That is stupid. I had a case out of Michigan, not quite like this one, but a case that I testified in court, and the defendant didn't call 911 and ended up doing a bunch of stupid stuff. And guess what? That got him hemmed up for years and years in what otherwise would have probably been seen as a justified use of deadly force, and still should have been, in my opinion. That's why we went to court to testify. But because of the after effects, because of this stuff, the judge wouldn't even let him argue for self-defense because of the evidence of a depraved mind of not calling 911 and destroying evidence. That's a terrible thing to do. Don't do it, friends. That leads people into lifetimes in prison, and that's an awful lot of time in a state-sponsored gated community that you do not want to live in, an awful lot of bologna sandwiches, and not the bologna that you think I'm talking about, and a lot of non-consensual butt stuff that you are not going to enjoy at all. Do better than this, friends, and cover your ass.